in the big city. Guess what we're talking about today? Bees. Bees are a very important part of the little farm. We really enjoy having bees, but they're also one of the most frustrating things about the little farm. Because of our other animals, the ducks and the chickens and the goats, we can interact with them on a daily basis. And even though I try to pay a lot of attention to the bees, they're not just quite as warm and cuddly as our other animals. I do, however, check on them on a daily basis. I don't get inside the hive every day, but I do come by and check and make sure that their behavior is normal for a hive of bees. So far, our bees, I think, are doing pretty good. In a little bit, we're going to go ahead and get inside the hive and see what we can find. I wanted to share a couple of things about our bees with you. First of all, oops, I have a lot of stuff here to show you, so I'm going to get it a little bit organized. Sorry. All right, let me put this stuff over here. I wanted to show you this container. This is the container that our bees came in, and this is called a package of bees. When you get a container like this of bees, we ordered it from a local store that we have. It sells feed and supplies, and then once a year they sell bees. So this is what the package of bees looks like. Inside the package is this little container, and inside of this little container is Her Majesty the queen bee. Now the reason that she's in the container and gets them used to scent, each queen has their own unique scent, and once they get used to her scent and they know that she's the queen, they're going to stay and do everything they can to make sure that she survives. Inside this little container is a little cork. They put the queen inside here, they close it up, they put a little cork in there, and the cork is made out of candy. And usually the queen bee will be in there with a couple of helper bees, and the helper bees will chew through the candy so that the queen can get out and be in her hive. But Miss Annette is a little impatient sometimes, so I go ahead and open it and let the queen out after a few days, after she's been in the hive for a few days, and I let her out. So that's what I do. But what I do when I open the hive is I open it up and I keep her inside the little container, and I hang her in there. I put a little thumbtack right here, and it hangs inside the hive so that the bees all stay around there because they're used to her scent and they want to stay with her. And then after I'm done putting the queen inside the hive, I take this, pound it down, and shake all the bees to the bottom, and then I flip it and shake them all out, and they all come out pretty much. So they do a pretty good job of getting out of there. And I'll show you in this little video clip of how I did it when the bees got here. And that's all it took, was just to shake them and put them in there. I put some food in there and they were fine, and they stayed. When we get inside the hive today, we're going to be looking for this. And this is an egg. This means the queen is laying. We're not going to be seeing it hanging like this. It's actually going to be inside the hive like this. Just think of this would have a top over it, the same shape over the top. and it would be in there. And we'll be looking at it like this to make sure that there's a little egg in there. We'll be looking for larvae, pupa, and of course live bees. We may or may not see the queen, I'm not sure. But if I do see her and I can get a good camera shot of her, I will try to point her out to you, okay? Now that I told you what we're looking for, I wanted to show you some of the equipment that we'll be using when we get inside the hive. I had to move into the shade. It is really a warm day today. Actually, it's hot today. But I keep all of my stuff in a container in the garage, and sometimes it gets a little dusty, so I do have to clean it out sometimes. Now these crowbar things, I have two, one for me and one for Mr. Steve. These we use to pry things apart inside the hive. And see, this is where you could take out a nail if you needed to. And these are kind of at an angle, at a sharp angle. And we use these to pry open the hive or pry frames apart or to do whatever kind of little chores that we need to do when we're inside the hive. We have a soft bristle brush so that if we need to move a bee, we just can gently push her aside. Well, that wasn't very gentle. We could gently push her aside. We have gloves, lots of gloves. Now they're made out of leather, and they're there to protect your hands from getting stung. Trying to think of all the things, but there's so much about beekeeping, so much. But I just wanted to share a couple of my beekeeping stories with you before we got in the hive. I'm going to stay in the shade. I hope you don't mind, but it is terribly warm today, and I don't want to get sweaty before I get in the hive because I just feel that the sweat makes the bees a little bit fidgety. And I want everybody to be calm when we get in the hive because I have a lot of work to do in there today. But I wanted to share these stories with you about my beekeeping experience. You know, we've had bees for quite a while here on the little farm, and we've moved them in different places. One of the reasons that I have them in the garden is because I have Emily. You all remember Emily. She's been on several videos here on the little farm. Well, she loves the bees, and the first thing she did when she came to the little farm is she would make a beeline to the bees, and it just wasn't safe. So we decided to put the bees inside the garden, behind a gate and a fence, just for the safety of Emily and any other children that might be way too attracted to the bees, and they might make some not so careful choices. So that's why the bees are in the garden, and I think they're doing okay there, but I think that this winter or this early spring I might move the beehive from where it's facing, and I might move it to into another direction, facing more of the morning sun instead of facing the late morning sun. Anyway, I wanted to tell you a couple of stories that's happened to me with bees that might turn people off to beekeeping altogether, but I just haven't been turned off yet, and I've been stung many times. As a matter of fact, one time I got a package of bees, and it was supposed to be raining the next day, well, the next several days, and putting a package of bees in a hive during a rainstorm is not a very good idea. So I had to do it, and Mr. Steve was not there that day. He was at work, and I had to do it by myself. So I thought, I can do this. So I went ahead and did the whole unpackaging of the bees and putting the queen inside the hive and everything. And I was pretty confident. I had my bee hat on, but I must not have tied it very tightly because a couple of bees got inside the veil. Well, not only did they get inside the veil, but they got inside my nose. They did, and I kind of panicked for a second. I thought there's two bees in my nose. So I thought, well, what can I do? I can't breathe in because I'll breathe them all the way down. So I have to breathe out. So I took a deep breath, as still as I could. through my mouth, and I blew them out my nose. And I blew them out my nose, but as I blew them out my nose, I think one of them got angry, or both of them maybe, and they stung me inside my nose, which hurt a lot. I have to tell you, it does hurt when you get stung by a bee, and it hurt a lot. But I got the bees out of my nose, and I was relieved. I got the bees inside the hive. I got the bees out of my nose. However, my hands did start itching and my feet started itching, so I did have a reaction. I quickly went into the bathroom and took care of all that and got calmed down, and everything was fine. I didn't have to go to the hospital or anything. I took care of it. Another story about my bees that happened just recently was that since I'm changing the inside of the hive and decided to go frameless and let the bees build their own frame, I felt like that was the way to go. One day I was checking in on the bees and I noticed that the frame that they were building wasn't going in the direction I wanted them to. It was going kind of slanted towards the morning sun. So what I did was I cut that off and I put it back inside the frames with rubber bands, hoping that the bees would, okay, here's our frame, we're just going to keep working on it. Well, the bees did not like that at all. And the next day, I saw thousands of bees all in the air. It was almost black with bees, just all in the air. And they were all just coming out of the hive like crazy. And they were flying in the air, and there were just all of them coming out. And then I looked to where they were landing. They were landing in the bamboo across from the garden. And there was a big pile of bees like this, and there were bees flying around. And I thought, what can I do? My bees are trying to run away. I ran inside, I got a sheet, and covered the beehive. Then I went and got some tape and closed all the entrances and exits to the beehive. I went and I got a box and a ladder, and I went to where the bees were in the big mound. Now, when bees are trying to run away, they are very gentle because they're not really concerned about anything else but saving the queen and making sure the queen is safe and making sure that there's enough food to survive to wherever they're going. So all the bees, when they're getting ready to leave, they gorge themselves. They eat and eat and eat. Now, you might know how that feels. Sometimes when you have a little bit too much, you really don't feel like doing too much. You kind of feel like, all right, I ate my big meal and I'm just going to sit. Well, that's kind of how bees feel when they're getting ready to run away from home. They gorge themselves on the honey, and then they go to a little spot, and then they rest, and then they leave. So luckily for me, the little spot was right here in the bamboo. I got my box and my ladder. I climbed up there, and I shook the bamboo and shook all the bees back in the box, went to the hive, and dumped them back in the hive. I did that 2 or 3 times before I got all the bees out of the bamboo and put them back. Well, they haven't tried to run away since, but I've been keeping a really close eye on them. But you know, watching the bees and watching their behaviors and learning more about bees, and I learn more about bees every year. I learn about these animals that I have on the little farm. Every year I do research and I read books and I watch and I observe and try to make sure that everybody has a good quality of life, including me and Mr. Steve. Anyway, let's go ahead and get in the beehive. Mr. Steve is getting the smoker ready for me. So then I'm going to get inside the hive and we're going to take a look around and see. I've got a little bit of work to do, and I don't know if I'm going to be successful or not, but I wanted you here with me to explore the beehive. So they're doing what I want them to do. They're building their comb on these little popsicle sticks that I put in here. So this is exactly what I want them to do. So you can see in here, those are where some of the queens lay her eggs, and you can see some of them with their bottoms sticking out right here. You see all the bees in there. They built all that beautiful comb, working hard. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this comb and I'm going to rubber band it to a frame so that they can make use of this. Now I'm not sure if I'm going to move this or not, because it's only attached in one small spot and I'm afraid I'll knock it down. So I'm going to look around a little. Now under this piece of board, this is where I made my mistake this summer, and hopefully we're just going to go ride it through the fall and winter and see what happens. But I'd like to remove this board out of here and just have it free-flowing for the bees so they wouldn't have to crawl through this little tiny space. But it works. They're doing what I want them to do. And I think, just like anything on the little farm, we try it and see if it works, and if it doesn't, we tweak it. And that's what we're doing. But I got some good footage of what I was doing. I've accomplished it. I put the top on, the lid, and now I'm going to feed the bees because it's late summer and the nectar flow is going to be going down. So I have a bucket of sugar water with some holes in it, and I'm going to put it inside the hive. So if they're hungry, they can eat. Put the top on. And there we go. We had a good look inside the hive. Thank you for visiting Miss Annette's little farm in the big city. Make sure you get outside today, and we'll see you next time. Bye!